Today we're going to speak about the inventor, archetype 24 in Taurus. As usual, I'm starting with a little presentation. This is a depiction of the inventor archetype, and it's Lindsay Foy who painted this a few years ago. The inventor is in transit from April 28th to May 3rd. This is the gate of rationalizing. It is the hexagram in the I Ching of returning, and in the gene keys, the frequency band goes from the shadow of addiction to the city of silence, and this is the pathway of invention. This is the quarter of initiation, and it's the very, very last gate. When we look at the quarters, we actually have them starting with the Sphinx gate. So they start with the gates that are in the G center that make up the incarnation cross of the Sphinx. We're going to see that next week we have the 2, and then before we change to the quarter of duality, we have the 7, and then we are going to have in the quarter of mutation the 1. And here, the first one in where we are in the initiation is the 13. So the Sphinx gates are creating the limits in the wheel for the quarters. So here we are in the part of the wheel where we have the thunder trigram on the bottom, and the wheel is grouped into 8 pieces of the cake, and that's where we have the elements in the I Ching, which are different than the elements that we have in astrology. So here we have thunder, earth, mountain, water, wind, sky, or heaven, lake, and fire. So all the hexagrams are made up of 2 of those elements. And there are 8 of them, of course, that are made up of 2 of the same, and that's that kind of archetypal energy. So in this case, we're going to have thunder and earth. So looking again at those elemental energies, when we have thunder over thunder, that is the same as 51. When we have earth over earth, that is the same as 2. So we could say that this one is made up of a combination of the elemental energy of the 2 and the 51. So that means that the shadow of addiction is the dislocation of agitation, or dislocation in agitation. The gift of invention is orientation with initiative, I would say, and the city of silence is the unity of awakening. So here we're grouping by astrology. And then we have 12 zodiac signs. So instead of 8 elements, we have 12 zodiac signs. We're now in the part of the wheel where we have Taurus. Taurus corresponds to the 2nd house. It's the first time in the wheel where we have Venus as the ruler. Venus is also the ruler of Libra and the 7th house. So some of the characteristics of Taurus: the lover, the dancer, and embodied beauty, service to self-growth through the experience of the senses. And this is fixed earth. So first time in the wheel, we meet earth. And Taurus is the flower and the fruit that wants to be smelled, tasted, and pollinated. And then here we have the programming partners. So on the other side of the wheel from Taurus, we're going to have Scorpio. And we have gate 44. So if you have gate 24 in your activation sequence or incarnation cross, you're also going to have the 44, because the activation sequence is made up by 2 pairs of programming partners. And then the same thing, if you have the 24 in your nodes in human design, you're also going to have the 44. And here we have the body graph. So we are in the head center in the individual circuitry, and we call this the inventor. And like we said before, this is an individual gate, and some of the keynotes: pausing, pondering, and revelation. And here we're looking at the entire process, so the channel of awareness when the 24 connects to the 61. And here we can see that the theme is to be a thinker. So here we have individual circuitry, and the keynote is empowerment, and it has to do with knowing. So with the individual circuitries, like I know or I don't. So here it's hearing, and it's about knowing or not knowing. So there's nothing, and then the pulse comes, the mutation comes, and then we know. And I actually wanted to read a little snippet from the Line Companion, because I like the introduction to this gate. The now is something that does not last very long. We are dealing here with a relative present when we are dealing with individuality. And that present is always reflecting on both what is past and projecting on what is in the future. But it is not doing this visually. It is an acoustic process, and it has to do with what has been taken in terms of what's been heard. Part of what we hear is that we hear very accurately now, and other parts of what we hear, we don't hear as well at all. We hear in waves. That means that we only remember parts of what has been said, not all of it. When you're dealing with the nature of the individual, so this is an individual gate, an individual circuitry, you're dealing with the dilemma of knowing. To know what you can know, to know what you can know, but what is not important for you to know, and to know what is unknowable. If you cannot distinguish between those three, you will never find silence in your mind, because that is the one thing that the individual mind is looking for: silence. In the same way that the abstract mind does not want any bad old movies anymore, the individual mind would just like to have silent and quiet in here. So I thought that was cool. Like knowing what's worth knowing and what's not worth knowing, and the deafness that we have in a lot of those gates. So here we have a really good depiction of individual circuitries. So a lot of deafness, a lot of knowing or not knowing. And it actually goes together. If you continue to read in the line companion, you're going to see how this one is connected to 38 and 28. And that kind of struggle to know, and also the struggle to have a purpose, because that's very connected to the inspiration of the 61, and then the kind of conclusion or the returning to get the knowing in the 24. You guys want to look at the transits? Let's do that. So we are now in the third line of the 24, and I've noticed for the last few days that we do have the 45 in Jupiter that is connecting to the 21 that is now in Mercury. So it's going to start to move out today even. So that, however, that channel, which is the money line, can have given us some determination and some actually connection to the throat to actually be able to express. This is the last week of the year. So we are now in April. I hope I'm right, but I believe it's the last week of the year where we have all planets direct, because on Monday we have Pluto that's going retrograde, and that's a long retrograde. So right now there is a lot of manifestation energy that's there for us. And you can see that in the defined throat center, so this is the collective energy that we're all influenced by, we are having many different voices. So we have the voice of the head of the tribe, connected to also the ability to organize things and have the determination needed. We have the individual energy that is connected to the energy we're speaking about today, with the style and kind of that agent of creativity that we have in the 8. And then we have two gates that are collective logical, where the 31 is the voice of the elected leader, and then the 16 has this versatility. And even if it's not an individual gate, what it does is that it identifies with something so much that it actually goes over and over, speaking about the 24, so that it can achieve mastery. So all that is activated in the throat, which is powerful. So this week, if you have been hesitating, am I starting, am I not starting? We have Pluto in the gate that is initiating the whole entire thing, the start codon in the genome. So before it goes retrograde, I think if you have a project, if there is something that you know you need to share, but you haven't brought it out, this is probably a week to start doing that, when everything is moving forward. And we have this powerful connection between Jupiter and Mercury in the money channel.